Hello everyone. Before starting the video, subscribe to the channel, because there are many different scary adventures. In the small town of Millfield, nothing much ever happened. The streets were quiet, the houses were rolled, and the people kept to themselves. But there was something strange about the town that no one could quite put their finger on. Maybe it was the way the shadows seemed to move at night, or the way the wind whispered secrets through the trees. Whatever it was, the people of Millfield knew that there was something sinister lurking just beneath the surface. It all started with the disappearance of a young woman named Sarah. She was a beloved member of the community, always willing to lend a helping hand to anyone in need. But one day, she simply vanished without a trace. The police searched the town and surrounding areas, but there was no sign of Sarah anywhere. As the weeks turned into months, the people of Millfield began to grow restless. They started to whisper amongst themselves, wondering if Sarah's disappearance was just the beginning. And then, one by one, more people began to vanish. Each time, the police were left with no clues, no suspects, and no leads. The town was gripped with fear, and people started to take matters into their own hands. They formed vigilante groups, patrolling the streets at night with weapons in hand. But no matter how hard they searched, they could never find the source of the disappearances. One night, a group of 3 men were patrolling the outskirts of town when they stumbled upon an old abandoned house. The windows were boarded up, and the roof was caved in, but something about the place seemed official. The men cautiously approached the house, weapons at the ready. As they entered the house, they were met with a sight that made their blood run cold. The walls were covered in photographs of the missing townspeople, each one with their eyes crossed out in red marker. There were newspaper clippings tacked to the walls, detailing the disappearances in grisly detail. And then they heard a noise. It was coming from upstairs. The men crept up the stairs, heart pounding in their chests. As they reached the top of the staircase, they saw something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. There, in the middle of the room, stood Emmanuel. He was tall and thin, with a wild look in his eyes. He was holding a knife, and there was blood on his clothes. The men froze, unsure of what to do next. And then the man spoke. "I did it," he said. "I took them all. And now, I'm going to take you too." The men lunged at the man, hoping to overpower him. But he was quick, and he fought back with a ferocity that surprised them. In the end, only one of the men made it out of the house alive. When the police arrived at the scene, they found the bodies of the other 2 men, as well as several more that had been missing for months. And they found something else too, a diary. It was filled with ramblings about the man's hatred for the people of Millfield, his desire to punish them for their perceived sins. The man was eventually caught and brought to trial, but the damage had already been done. The town of Millfield was forever scarred by the events that had taken place, and the people could never shake the feeling that something dark and malevolent was still lurking just beneath the surface. Once upon a time, there was a small town nestled in the midst of a dense forest. The people of this town were friendly and welcoming, but they had a peculiar habit that outsiders found unsettling. Every year, on the night of the harvest moon, the townspeople would gather in the town square and perform a ritual that had been passed down for generations. The ritual involved a young boy or girl, no older than 12 years of age, being chosen by the townspeople to be the sacrifice. The chosen child would be blindfolded and led to the center of the town square, where they would be tied to a stake. The townspeople would then dance around the child, chanting in a language that was unknown to outsiders. When the chanting reached a crescendo, the townspeople would stop and wait for the harvest moon to rise. As soon as the moon rose above the horizon, the townspeople would light a bonfire and watch as the flames consumed the child. The townspeople believed that this sacrifice would bring them good luck and ensure a bountiful harvest for the coming year. As you can imagine, this ritual was deeply disturbing to outsiders who stumbled upon the town. It was rumored that some had even disappeared without a trace, but nobody knew for sure what had happened to them. One day, a group of travelers arrived in the town, curious about the strange ritual they had heard about. The townspeople welcomed them warmly, but they could sense that something was official. They soon discovered that the townspeople had been hiding a dark secret, and they were determined to uncover it. The travelers spent the day exploring the town, and as night fell, they watched from a distance as the townspeople gathered in the town square. They knew that they had to act quickly if they were going to stop the sacrifice from taking place. As the townspeople began their chanting, the travelers crept closer to the town square, trying to get a better view of what was happening. They were horrified to see the young child tied to the stake, tears streaming down their face. The travelers knew that they had to act quickly if they were going to save the child. They charged into the town square, shouting and brandishing their weapons. The townspeople were taken aback, and some of them tried to flee. In the confusion, the travelers were able to free the child and escape from the town. They brought the child with them, determined to give them a better life than the one they would have had in the town. As they made their way through the forest, the travelers couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They heard strange whispers on the wind and felt a cold presence following them. Eventually, they made it to a nearby village, where they were able to find sanctuary. They learned that the small town they had left behind had a long history of sacrifice, and that the townspeople had made a deal with an ancient entity that demanded a sacrifice every year in exchange for their good fortune. The travelers never forgot the horrors they had witnessed in that small town. They knew that they had stumbled upon a secret that was meant to remain hidden, but they also knew that they had done the right thing by saving that child. They never spoke of their experience again, but they would always carry the memory with them, a reminder of the darkness that lurked in even the smallest of towns. In the small town of Willow Creek, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, there was a strange tradition that had been passed down for generations. Every year, on the first full moon of autumn, the townspeople would gather in the town square and light a bonfire. As the flames licked the night sky, the town's elders would recount a story that had been told for as long as anyone could remember. It was the story of the darkening, a time when the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest, and the souls of the departed could walk among the living. The townspeople would shudder and shake as they listened to the tale, and as the night wore on, they would retreat to their homes, locking their doors and windows tightly, praying that they would not be visited by the ghosts of their ancestors. For many years, the tradition was observed without incident. But as time passed, the stories began to change. People whispered of strange sightings in the woods surrounding the town, of figures lurking in the shadows, and of strange noises that echoed through the night. At first, the elders dismissed these stories as fanciful tales, but as more and more people reported strange occurrences, they began to worry that something truly sinister was at work in their town. As the date of the darkening approached, the townspeople grew increasingly anxious. They boarded up their homes and barricaded themselves inside, determined to protect themselves from whatever horrors might be waiting outside. But as the night wore on, they began to hear strange noises outside their homes, scratching at the doors, tapping on the windows, and whispers in the darkness that sent shivers down their spines. One by one, the townspeople succumbed to their fear. They fled into the woods, hoping to escape the horrors that had descended upon their town. But they found only more darkness, more whispers, more figures lurking in the shadows. In the end, there was no one left in Willow Creek. The town lay silent and deserted, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the autumn breeze. No one knows what became of the townspeople, but some say that on the night of the darkening, the veil between the living and the dead was truly lifted, and the souls of the departed claimed their revenge on the living. And to this day, No one ventures near the abandoned town of Willow Creek for fear of what might still linger there in the darkness.